Hello and welcome to Global Issues and Answers. We're going to do an interesting show today with a very good friend of mine, Aida Thomas. She and I both were members of the Church of Scientology for a very long time. We're both trained spiritual counselors, and we both were kind of kicked out of the church for rebelling against doctrinal changes that the current Scientology management has gradually entered into the religion, which we think has perverted it. Anyway, Aida is now with the International Free Zone Association. Welcome, Aida.
Thank you.
And what would you like to talk about today?
Well, I would like to talk about how, as a result of the changes, there has been religious shunning, there has been expellings that were unjust, and how people's lives were devastated by that.
Yeah, it's including my own, including yours to some extent.
And hundreds of people all over the planet, actually, not just you and I.
Oh, yeah,
here
many people. Before we go on, I'd like to tell our audience that we're taping this on May 23rd, 2006, so you get an idea of the context. Also, you know, I don't want the viewpoints we state on the show to necessarily reflect on any organization or even on any individual. For instance, I may say something that Aida doesn't agree with, and she may say something that I don't agree with, and it's just basically a conversation. Right. So I'm doing kind of a global disclaimer here. Okay. So we don't get each other into trouble.
Right.
Anyway, so Aida and I met a while back when I was in the process of getting kicked out of the church. Why don't you tell our audience about that a little bit?
Well, in recent years, there has been some changes in the philosophy of Scientology, not how it was written by the founder L. Ron Hubbard, and all those who opposed to the new management were kicked out of Scientology regardless of who they were. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, Aida and I have both been in Scientology for a very long time, or had been in for a very long time. Mm-hmm. I got involved in 1970 in New York, and when was it that you got involved?
I got involved in 1976 in San Diego, California.
Uh-huh. And your husband's a Scientologist, or was, well, you're both still Scientologists.
Yes.
Okay. But you're not in good standing. So what happened? Why did you get, you know, repudiated by the church?
Well, what happened is that they have been alteration of the scriptures of Scientology. Mm-hmm. The new management that took over after the death of the founder did some alterations, and I'd like to show you some tonight.
Okay, sure.
All right. One of the alterations is in the auditor's code. An auditor, as we know, is a counselor in Scientology. And there is one point in particular, and what I'm going to show here is one that was printed in 1980. Mm-hmm. This is the Auditor's Code. And then I have this book where Ron originally wrote the Auditor's Code. And there are some differences here that from what he said. I have it marked here. Let me see, where did I put it?
You know, the Auditor's Code is really important. It's one of the most important short pieces in Scientology. It's what a Scientology counselor has to follow.
It's a set of rules in order to protect the person who is receiving the counseling, and in order to protect the counselor as well. Mm-hmm. You know, like the doctors have their own rules that they're not supposed to be broken, and for ethical and legal reasons. Mm-hmm. So in this one is a list of promises that one makes. And on this one, in point number 25 of this series of codes, this was written in 1968, and it says here, I promise to cooperate fully with the legal Organizations of Dianetics and Scientology as developed by L. Ron Hubbard in safeguarding the ethical use and practice of the subject according to the basics of standard tech. This is what L. Ron Hubbard wrote. It's as developed by him. But the new management decided that that had to be changed. And they changed that point, and it says here, I promise to cooperate fully with the authorized. They changed legal to authorized. And it says, I promise to cooperate fully with the authorized organizations of Dianetics and Scientology in safeguarding the ethical use and practice of those subjects. And as you notice, it doesn't say as developed by L. Ron Hubbard.
So they're diminishing the authorship to some extent.
Not only that, when you go to do Scientology, you are thinking that you're going to receive L. Ron Hubbard's tech, but that's not the case.
Tech meaning technology.
The technology, yes.
To back up a little bit, Scientology is an applied religious philosophy. And so there's what Scientologists, or what Hubbard called technology, which means certain procedures and methods that are used to help people achieve spiritual enlightenment. And the word technology is generally used by Scientologists to denote the procedures of Scientology as distinguished from the philosophy of the subject, or the religious aspects of the subject. So,
that's very correct.
So when we talk about technology, that's what I want to make sure that we're not confusing people, because Scientology has a whole lingo of its own, and Scientologists who are really wrapped up in the subject are used to talking using the lingo of the subject. So now you were trained to a very high point in Scientology.
Yes, I came from Mexico 25 years ago. I studied law in Mexico. I was on the way to becoming a lawyer when I found out about Scientology, and I liked the idea of becoming a Scientology counselor instead, because I realized that helping people not through legal means, but through spiritual and mental means was much better. And so...
That's good. And then you did a lot of training, and you did your training in English, not in Spanish, right?
That's correct.
And so you became, what's your classification? They have different classifications of levels of competence in Scientology, and a Scientology counselor is called an auditor. So what level auditor are you, Aida?
I'm a Class 8 auditor, which will be the equivalent in this country where a master or a doctor.
It's probably a doctorate.
Right.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. And it takes years to get to that level, right?
Very many years. Yes, just like if you went to college.